Can somebody just go ahead and send in the messages or in the chat if you can hear us? Can anybody hear us out there? All righty. All righty. Let's make it happen. As you know, this is a live show, so please forgive us for any type of programming issues on that end of it. Welcome to the Hill of Justice Live. I'm Jerome Hill, and with me is retired Sheriff Victor Hill, and we're your hosts. Tonight is our final episode of a three-part series concerning the Rainbow House in Jonesboro, Georgia. So if you missed part 1 and 2, please do yourselves a favor and watch those videos. It'll catch you up to speed to what we've talked about since that time. Brother?
Yes, just a quick recap. This is our third part on the Rainbow House. To folks who don't live in Atlanta, Georgia, not familiar with it, the Rainbow House is a children's shelter, and unfortunately, sexual abuse took place. And those kids that were supposed to be protected from abuse became the victims of abuse by the very employees that were there. What's even more sickening than that is there were two elected officials, one that sat on the board and basically ran the entire operation from that board, the Clayton County DA District Attorney, and then also another individual, the chairman, which is the equivalent to the mayor of Clayton County, was made aware of it and chose not to uh, make any notification whatsoever, even though they're mandated reporters. We've had Dr. Katrina Holloway on twice, and she gave us her background knowledge of it. And now we have a very special guest who it's kind of a surprise for me that she decided to come on the show after watching it, and I think it's going to be a surprise for everybody. But I think she has a lot of good information. Let's bring her on, and then I'll introduce her.
All right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, hey, welcome. We
Thank
have former
you.
Commissioner Felicia Franklin. She
Mhm,
was the commissioner for 8 years in Clayton County in District 3.
mhm,
Um, as a longtime resident of Clayton County, living there over 30 years, I've lived in every district. So at one point, she was my commissioner.
mhm.
And I just want to say this as we welcome you here. I want to thank you because you were the only commissioner that fought to get raises for law enforcement. When I say law enforcement, that's not just the sheriff's office, that's not just the Clayton County Police, but also all first responders, fire, EMS, and I think everybody's very grateful to you for that.
Oh, wow.
And
Thank you.
every day I ride down Clayton County, but when I ride down Terra Boulevard at night, it used to be one of the darkest streets there, and now there's a lot of light. And I remember you brought those lights there and fought for it and got on the news. And one other thing I want to thank you for too, not just giving me a lighted street where I can see people and don't come close to them when I'm driving down Terra Boulevard at night, but you brought us a community center that's very, very unique and has a black box theater in it. And you also brought the Boys and Girls Club. So I'm
Thank
very
you.
appreciative of all of those things, and I enjoy all of them as a Clayton County citizen. I just want to thank you for that. But welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff Hill. It's so good to see you and glad to know you're doing well. We do miss you. I know the citizens there in Clayton do miss you. And good to meet you as well, Mr. Hill, number two, Jerome.
Yes, yes. How are you?
I am
Yeah,
so glad.
excuse that shirt he got on. That's another story.
I
But let's
liked it
get
actually.
yeah.
I'm so sorry.
But let's get to we're here for a serious matter now that we've done the introductions. I want to start out, Commissioner, before we hear from you. There's something we've got to play. I want
Mhm,
to play a video, and it's about what the Rainbow House was intended to be. And I
mhm.
want everyone to, this will give people a chance to get a look at the Rainbow House, what it looks like. And I also want you to pay attention to what's being said. And I want everyone to pay attention to who's saying it. And
Mhm.
I'm Jerome, if you would be kind enough, play that video, please.
Sure.
The Rainbow House is a phenomenal organization. We've been in existence for 33 years, and it's an agency that cares for the children who have been abandoned or neglected. And we partner with the DFACS, Department of Children and Families. So the children that come to us are the children who are in need of family and care. We also have an assessment center which does the exams, forensic medical exams, and forensic interviews for children who have been abused, whether it's been physically or sexually abused. Our center gives the forensic interviews in partnership with local law enforcement and as well as the DA's office to ensure that those who have hurt the children are paying the price for it.
The significance of supporting the Rainbow House here in Clayton County is to make sure that those children who are abandoned and neglected have a safe place to go to. And by supporting their cause, their mission, we're making sure that we are making a better, stronger community as it relates to our children. The Clayton County Board of Commissioners has supported the Rainbow House for many years now. We provide financial assistance to the Rainbow House in the form of a Commissioner's Block Grant. This block grant allows them to provide for operational costs and any other resources that the children who are housed there may need. It's very important that not only the Board of Commissioners support the Rainbow House, but the community as a whole. It takes a village to raise a child. It also takes a village to make sure that our children are being looked after and taken care of.
I look forward to where the Rainbow House is headed. Throughout this year, the Rainbow House has gone through a lot of transition, both with leadership, the organization as a whole, so we're in the process of rebranding and rebuilding.
Commissioner, before you start, Jerome, can you do me one favor? Can you play that video one more time? And I want you to stop after the first female, and then I want her to talk. I want us to hear again what she said, her last sentence. If you could just play it up to the first lady when she talks, if you could.
The Rainbow House is a phenomenal organization. We've been in existence for 33 years, and it's an agency that cares for the children who have been abandoned or neglected. And we partner with the DFACS, Department of Children and Families. So the children that come to us are the children who are in need of family and care. The DFACS, Department of Children and Families. So the children that come to us are the children who are in need of family and care. We also have an assessment center which does the exams, forensic medical exams, and forensic interviews for children who have been abused, whether it's been physically or sexually abused. Our center gives the forensic interviews in partnership with local law enforcement and as well as the DA's office to ensure that those who have hurt the children are paying the price for it.
The significance of supporting the Rainbow House here in Clayton County is to make sure that those children who are abandoned.
Yeah, apparently won't stop.
Okay. Maybe I need to let you take the floor from here, Commissioner. But let me just repeat what she said, that we partner with the DA's office and law enforcement to make sure that kids that are being abused physically or sexually, that doesn't happen anymore. Commissioner, I'm going to let you talk because I probably talked too much now. Who was that lady that said that?
That was, I have to breathe in a minute, Sheriff and Jerome, because that lady that was speaking was Miss Kimber. And so we need to understand who Miss Kimber is in this entire situation. Also, I do want to make one other note. That video was actually filmed within the Clayton County Government Studio.
Okay.
That video, it speaks to the fact that the Rainbow House was designed and came about to be able to provide a safe space for children. But in actuality, the person that's speaking on behalf of the organization is the main one that was involved in the cover up. The main one. She is, if I believe it, we're right, the actual mother of the molester or the rapist, I would say.
Right. So for those who aren't familiar, that lady, Mia Kimber, who said that we work with the DA's office and we work with the law enforcement, she was arrested along with her son uh, for sexually abusing children. And she's still out on bond, even though he's now serving time in prison. We'll get into that and reasons for that as well, too. So let me, Commissioner, tell us how you came to know about this and then tell us what you tried to do about it.
That's a glad you asked that question. First of all, this article came out right around 2023, and I think I may have forwarded it to you all. And what I thought interesting is right around that particular time when I saw this news clip, I thought it strange that as a commissioner that we had not received any information on this.
Commissioner, let me stop you there. I apologize.
Hmm.
Jerome, can you please play the news clip she's talking about so they can know how the commissioner came to find out about this and then what happened with her afterwards when she tried to address it?
A new arrest in connection to a sexual misconduct investigation at a Clayton County youth shelter and child advocacy center. That new information comes after police arrested 3 people either accused of molesting a child or covering it up earlier this week.
Fox 5's Tyler Fingered is live at the Clayton County Police Department tonight. Tyler, how long do detectives think this had been going on?
Well, Russ, good evening to you. Clayton County investigators say these disturbing sexual misconduct allegations at a local youth shelter go back about 6 months. Police have arrested 4 people so far, but tell me, more arrests could come.
Rainbow House Incorporated in Jonesboro is meant to be a safe place for abused, neglected, and abandoned children. But Clayton County Police paint a different picture, one of sexual misconduct.
I would say this is one of the second worst cases I've seen.
Police accuse Caleb Randolph, who is now a former employee at Rainbow House, of inappropriate sexual conduct with at least 3 children at the facility. Detectives say Randolph's mother, Mia Kimber, who is the facility's executive director, tried to cover up the incident with the help of Monica Jones. Investigators say Randolph was initially fired in January, but was rehired a week and a half later.
We found that their behavior was criminal, greed, unprofessional, negligent, and not in the best interest of the juveniles. It was like watching a Netflix series unfold right before our eyes.
Investigators arrested a 4th employee this week, identified as Felicia Campbell. Detectives say she knew about the abuse, but failed to report it.
Trust was violated.
This father, whose identity we're not revealing, says at least one of his kids lived at Rainbow House in the last year. He says he is shocked and angry that this happened.
I hope that to the fullest extent of the law, they're prosecuted and they're labeled for what they are. To enable a sexual predator is dead wrong.
Detectives say the investigation launched this month after someone called police once they realized their reports weren't being looked into. Investigators say the children at Rainbow House are being relocated.
I would feel that the employees that were involved in the situation were unsafe to be around children, not necessarily that the facility itself was unsafe.
I'm glad that's...
Police say more arrests could come as victims come forward. We have a full list of all the charges that these people are facing on our website, fox5atlanta.com. We are live in Clayton County tonight. Tyler Fingert, Fox 5 News.
All right, thank you for playing that. I need to, and that was one point that I want to make sure that we hone in on. And that was that I would not say that the place is unsafe. I would say that the people who were in charge of the children were the ones that created that space unsafe. Let me tell you why I wanted to make sure that we put a pin in that. The Rainbow House is an initiative or organization that you would find throughout the United States. In fact, the Rainbow House was started by several business owners as well as key individuals within the Clayton County community for this particular local shelter. The county owned that building. They provided the building for free, and then they also provided the grant funding through what's called a block grant. And I heard you say something, Jerome, on our the last broadcast you had. And I want to assure you that, yes, that organization did receive federal funding through the block grant process, of which the Board of Commissioners would approve each year. So you have the building that's provided by the government, meaning the local government. And then you also have that block grant that comes from the federal government. And let's remember, when you have DHS involved, that is the state. So when you were asking about what different jurisdictions were involved, where they got the funding from, most definitely the Fed should have paid attention to this. Most definitely. So now, Sheriff Hill, if I may go back and answer your initial question, I found out about this when I saw that article. And to be quite honest, I was sitting and working. And as I was working, I saw this come across. And then maybe a little bit later, we received an email. And that email was from the then chair on paper. It was Mo Grant, the email was from. Now, I want you to make sure you understand this. The DA was the chair of that board. In fact, I believe you all have that information that showed that Tasha Mosley made this grand announcement right at January, I think it's January 25th of
Jerome, can you
20.
put that up? I'm sorry, Commissioner.
That's okay, 2022. So I want y'all to see this. And I'm sorry, it went pretty quick. So if you could show it one more time. And I'm going to give you full disclosure. I once thought this person was a friend of mine, and we'll get into that. But what's sad about this, over the period of time, I will always hear that she was on the board but was not the chair. And for some reason, she was itching to be the chair, itching to be in control of that board. Now, mind you, I want to confirm that that board was stacked by that DA, by the person that I thought was a friend of mine. I noticed it was stacked with key people who were working for large companies, Fortune 500 companies. And what was really, really interesting is quite a few of her assistant DAs were on that board. Now, let's begin with this. Number one, that's a conflict of interest because in that video, I don't know if we got to that part, but this facility is the C-sect facility. So that means for parents and for children that feel or felt or know that they've gone through something, the parents take them there. And that's where they have the forensic testing done for that child. Now, mind you, you just saw that video of the same person, Mia Kimber, who Tasha Mosley handpicked to be in that position, and she cannot refute it. She handpicked her to be in that position. And this is the very person that is at the core of all of this nightmare that has happened for the children. I think the best thing that I heard out of all that interview, whether it was the newscast or what we heard there, was the fact that it was like a TV film being unfolded. And that's true. But my question to you all is number one, why burn the whole house down when you already said it wasn't the facility that would put the kids in danger? This facility had been around for years. I'm talking about decades. In fact,
Wow.
Miss Casey, I want to make sure you know one of the huge business owners in Clayton County. And I'm going to make sure I say these things. Um, Miss Casey, who is one of the owners of a really, really successful company, family owned, she was involved in getting that program going. Now, the previous tax commissioner, Pat Bussey, she was involved to get Rainbow House up and going. And so all of a sudden, after even Rotary, which I was a part of, would go and make Thanksgiving dinner every Thanksgiving morning, and we were excited about it in a space where everyone could see what we were doing. And now you want to shut down the whole organization. Where do the children go now? Where do they go to get tested? What are you doing about all the cases that are now tainted because of this scandal? And there were emails with assistant DAs asking this DA, what do we do now?
Wow.
I never saw a response.
Wow.
If you know,
Jerome?
and real quick, I'm so sorry. I got to get this out before I forget. Now, I want to tell you all, I'm not I'm not as gifted as you gentlemen. Heal one and heal two. I don't come from law enforcement. I'm not an investigator. But I want you to think about this. Why you got to burn the house down? Most of the time, somebody's burning the house down. Why? Because there are bodies inside, as you would say in an investigation. In this case, it would be because they know that there's evidence inside. They know it. They can't refute it.
So let's slow it down so people who don't understand or not from Clayton County or understand what you're saying. Uh, the DA was a chair of the board. We have proof of that right there. She was a chair of the board while the kids were being molested. uh, the lady that she handpicked, their personal friends, correct?
Correct.
Right. And then you got her son that's molesting kids there. So suddenly, when this comes out, then all of a sudden, let's just shut the whole house down. So I
Correct.
I, I get what you're saying. It's kind of like I think Jerome and I we've had conversations like that on the show where we talk about how a specialized unit will get involved in something controversial and they'll shut the whole unit down like Red Dogs, which doesn't make sense because if a patrolman does something wrong, we don't do away with uniform patrol. If a detective does something wrong, we don't do away with the detective division. We just discipline the people who did and replace them with good people.
That's right.
So I get exactly what you're saying on that regard. Jerome, I know you got some questions. And Jerome, let me get your assistance so we can really put this in chronological order and slow it down so people can understand the severity of this. And before I turn it over to you, let's also understand that you got Mia Kimber that's there on the video promoting the Rainbow House saying this is where we take care of people who do things to kids, but she and her son is the one doing it. Then you got the chairman, Jeff Turner, who we had Katrina Holloway on the show. And she said that when he got this complaint in writing from her, he threw it in the trash can. And he
Sheriff,
said it's just a disgruntled employee. And we established on that last show that he's personal friends with the DA who we see sitting here. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I apologize. You said something that is really key. I would like for us to pay attention to this timeline because if we think about it, it was stated that people um, had not basically reported this egregious act and what was going on. When in actuality, we know that they did. Not only did they report it, but it was reported to the chairman, according to his secretary. And what I find interesting is if you pay attention to the timeline in which she stated that she informed him, it's going to be very suspicious. And the reason I say it's very suspicious is because it's interesting as well that we're going to see it a little bit later, but I'm not going to go into that deeply, but I want to tee it up in the sense of the hard talk about we're going to get everybody involved. So if you're going to get everybody involved, why is Mia Kimber still out on bond? Why is Tasha Mosley still the DA? And why is Jeff Turner still walking around without having to answer those questions? It
And I
was reported.
and I believe what the commission is talking about, and we played that video last time, brother, where the police chief said that he's given a stern warning that all mandated reporters will be held accountable. Now, interestingly, the two mandated reporters they held accountable actually reported it. They were arrested, and then proof came out that they filed a police report and they had to drop the charges. And it's very interesting that these detectives would take charges out on them, where in the system these two women had actually made police reports. So now it's a false arrest.
But not only, Mhm.
That means, excuse me, Commissioner,
I'm sorry.
that means that no one that truly didn't report this as a mandated reporter is being held accountable. And unfortunately and embarrassingly for Clayton County, those two main mandated reporters is the district attorney who we're looking at now and the chairman of Clayton County who was on there talking about how much he supports the Rainbow House. Commissioner, go ahead.
I'm glad you said that. So let's go back to the timeline once again as well. Don't forget that this was reported previously, and it was even stated in that online press conference that reports were not investigated. I'm going to say that again. It was stated that reports were not investigated. Now, also go back. That young man, and I don't even want to call him a young man, that man was let go previously for the same allegations. And I want to make sure that people understand when you are the CEO of a board, you are the chair of that board, the buck stops with you. All of those reportings of allegations, they would have had to come to that board in what you would call a private session because it did deal with children. So therefore, once again, if you look at the timeline, not only did Katrina Holloway state that she had provided the chairman with information of which I believe she said he threw it away, but they knew about the allegations before as well because they actually disciplined this young man and then brought him back.
and then the molestation continued.
Yes.
Jerome, I know you got a lot of questions, Detective. Go ahead.
One of the things that more so a statement than a question is just to say that how in the hell did we get to this point where it seems like not only did the county commissioners know through reports, how does a DA not know?
She knew.
And on top of that, especially with the first allegation that came out, how did Mia? How was she able to circumvent that? Does anybody know that?
No. I would suggest that she was not able to circumvent that, and I'm glad you asked you stated that question because I want to bring to your attention as well. Once again, no matter if it's a nonprofit organization, which remember a nonprofit organization is owned by the people, by the government. All right. So you asked how were they able to cover it up? Well, let me tell you. Once I saw that press conference, it was really intuition that led me to begin to dig. And we'll talk a little bit later where that intuition comes from.
Mm.
And so I reached out to the county attorney and I asked them for some information. And I even emailed um, that Mo Scott, along with the entire board of commissioners at that time, once it was brought to my knowledge in 2023. And I was asking questions. And in asking those questions, believe it or not, they were all very, the response was aggressive, non informative, and they refused to answer questions. And once that occurred, then my interest peaked even more. I'm like, something's not right here. They would not tell me who was on the board. Oh, we can't give that information. How you work for an attorney's office, DA, and you don't know that this is a government organization, quasi, and it's owned by the people if it's a nonprofit? How do you not know that your minutes have to be made public and published, not just made public and published? So you know what? Tell me no. And when I asked the question, I already knew where to find the answers. So I asked the attorney, give me every email that deals with the Rainbow House. And when I tell you I was shocked, we're talking about the timeline. January 25th of 2022, there's this big broad announcement, as you saw, that the DA is now the chair of this board. Let me ask you a question. Why was it within a few months that they were already changing her name from the CEO of the board? Those are the things I uncovered after
Jerome,
I
can you
put
put that up
pressure
so
on
we can
them.
look at it? I think that next document shows where right after these molestations started, then suddenly Tasha removes her
Yeah.
name and then
Yep, here it goes. All right.
puts the other person up there.
And
Yeah.
I wish we could circle it. If you could see, it's Tasha Mosley, and then Monica Scott, Arletta Bender, CFO. And if you notice the date, so you announced that you're chair of the board and you're all gun ho on January 25th of 2022, of which that ad ran in the information or the broadcast through the county for months. And so why is it that now, May 19th of 2022, you're removing yourself as chair altogether? Why would you do that? We all know that when you're elected to office, any office, particularly even a nonprofit, at minimum, it's a 1 year term for you to be able to serve as chair. 1 year. Now, let's make sure that we understand this. If you look at that document closely, it's filed with the Secretary of State. I uncovered all of this after I went around and around the mountain to be able to get our county attorney, which I'm no longer a commissioner, so it doesn't matter. I had to help our county attorney understand that the buck stopped with us as a board of commissioners, and had to call another attorney to explain to him, if he does not give me the information, just like they said, oh, everybody would be prosecuted, then he would be looked at being involved. You know why? Because he was trying to cover up for the DA. But that's not all I found. I would like for you all to go to the next piece here, and it's just about the timeline at this moment. There's another piece that I uncovered, and there were like pages and pages, probably over 400 documented pages of information. And honestly, it not only sickened me, but it still haunts me to this day. Look at this document, the date on it. Let's make sure, because I wear glasses, not trying to be funny. But if one of you can see better than me, what's that date on there?
November 30th, 2022, 6:30 p.m.
Okay, let's look. January 25th. Now you remove yourself, May, and now you're still conducting meetings as the chair of the board. That's falsifying records. That's falsifying records. If nothing more, this should have been questioned.
And for those who can't see it, it shows Tasha Mosley, who's still the sitting DA, doing the call to order um, on the board of directors. For those who can't read that document right there, but
Yep.
go ahead,
And
Commissioner.
there's much
Continue.
more in there that we wouldn't show because, of course, I was able to see some other things. But as I stated, this is public information. So if anybody ever tries to do what they did before in that email to try to circumvent getting this information, this is a nonprofit. It's a public organization of which these actual documents should have been published in a certain amount of time so that anyone in the public would be able to pull it up and take a look at it. Now, it's interesting that when they asked the question to the investigator, oh, well, how long do you think this has been going on? Oh, for the past 6 months. Obviously, something was going on around May. I'm not a detective, but something was going on around May. And that caused her to take her name off and continue to act in that role. And not only that, she continued to conduct business all the way through to 2023. Why? I don't know. Maybe it's to control the narrative. Maybe it's to control the fact that she didn't want anybody to know that she and Mia Kimber were friends. Maybe it was the fact that she knew that they did not do their due diligence the first time around when it was reported about these allegations. Now, I want to share something else with you that was very troubling in the information that I read. And obviously, we won't say any names or anything, but DeKalb County was heavily involved in this. It wasn't just Clayton, it was DeKalb County. So I read police reports where these children were troubled and they were stating how troubling it was in that facility. But yet and still, they were made to be the villains in it. I read it and it broke my heart. And I'm going to tell you why it broke my heart. I don't just speak on the effects of trauma from childhood abuse. And to be quite honest with you, the reason that I previously thought Tasha Mosley was a friend was because what I have since discovered in this whole new world, that we're in now of dealing with the trauma and understanding trauma and the effects of trauma. She and I had a trauma bond because she too went through some of the same things.
When you say trauma bond
Mhm.
and went through the same thing, can you be more specific so people can understand?
You tend to have a sympathetic or sympathetic approach to those who have gone through something as similar as myself. So I believe that I always knew something wasn't quite right, but I also believe that a lot of people extend almost like just a little bit, a hand of grace, I would say. And that's why I say I believe there was a trauma bond, meaning I extended a certain amount of grace to her because I knew what she had gone through as a child. I personally knew because of what I had gone through.
Okay, I think I understand. So what you're saying is y'all had a trauma bond during y'all friendship because both of y'all, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to assume both of y'all experience uh, some type of victimization of the
Yes.
type of things that happened at the Rainbow House. Okay, let me ask you this, and I want to dwell back into that, but let me ask you this: what did you do about this
Hmm.
when you found out? Did you just read it and you were shocked, or and then you threw it in the
Mm-mm.
trash can like Jeff Turner, or
No.
did you? What did you do?
No, actually, being quite honest with you, and I got to thank some very close friends of mine because that took a lot of time off from work to dive into that information. Like I said, it was pages and pages. So once I was able to glean that something was awry, I made notes. Not only did I make notes, but I created a timeline. And not only did I create the timeline, but I also attached each document to that timeline, brought it to the attention of our Board of Commissioners, brought it to the attention of
Let's
the
slow down a
attorney.
second. Let's slow down a second. You brought it to the attention of the Board of Commissioners. How did you do that?
Basically through email format. And then, of course, we have a certain forum where we can speak more in depth about things that can't be spoken about in public.
So,
Um,
I'm not being rude, but I want to make sure the audience follows what's going on. Okay, so you sent emails to who? Every commissioner, or who did you
I
send
did.
emails to?
I sent
And
emails.
eh, go ahead.
I sent emails to every commissioner. I sent emails to, I had the attorney send the documents over to the AG. I contacted the AG as well. I also sent it to the judicial system in Clayton. I sent it to the GBI. Let me say that again. I sent it to the GBI.
Okay, so I got to stop you. I'm not trying to be rude. Okay, the next question I have, but I got to make a statement, and I'm not trying to defend the GBI, but what I'm saying is this: I'm glad you did, but everyone needs to know in the state of Georgia, the GBI, which is the state's equivalent of the FBI, only three people can call the GBI in. So you can tell the GBI whatever you want, but unless the police chief or the sheriff or the chief judge, chief superior court judge, only they can call the GBI and come in. The GBI doesn't have the authority to just see wrong and do something. But if those three people make notification, something can happen. Now, here's where I want to say it gets interesting. When she sent that email, it went no doubt to Jeff Turner, who is the chairman, which is the
Most
equivalent of being
definitely.
the mayor. The police chief works for who? Jeff Turner.
Correct.
So he could have easily told him to call a GBI in, just like he told him to call a GBI in to cover up a fake letter he wrote to try and make it sound like it came from me. Let's not get into that. Let's stay on this.
I'm
So I
glad
want
you
to make
said
sure.
that too,
So
because the
so
GBI like to lie, because I sent them an email on that one as well.
got you. So I just want to clear that up. So now
Yes.
that I've said that, you send emails to all of these people.
Hmm.
What was the response? First of all, what response did you get from the Board of Commissioners?
Crickets.
Okay, and which means nothing. Okay, you said you also, we know the GBI, they got it, but there was nothing they could do anyway. Not making excuses, but the state law handcuffs them. And I hope at some point the legislators will change that so the GBI can come in on things whether they're called or not.
Mm.
Okay, so then who else did you say you sent the email to?
I had the county attorney send it to the attorney general because, based upon the research I had done, that was the proper chain to be able to inform them. And I have that email as well, and there was nothing. There's another part I would like to share with you all, and that is that I didn't stop. This notification process for me of digging deep, trying to get someone to listen, it began in May, and it honestly, May of 2023, and really it didn't end really until my tenure ended as chair. I mean, as commissioner. So one day I was at work, and I work with a lot of different agencies, government agencies, and I had a conversation with a gentleman who worked for Homeland Security, but he worked for Homeland Security somewhere out west. Okay, and so, and the things he was saying about the crimes they used to investigate, it piqued my interest. So I had an offline conversation, shared with them the same documents that I shared with you all today and many more. And he said, this needs to be dealt with. And he said, let me see what I could do for you. He actually called one of the number two lead people in Homeland Security. And that person was out of that, out west, somewhere in Arizona, somewhere out there. I mean, I forget where they were. But the point is, that person called me immediately. I had to take off from work to take the call. And she said, I received a phone call from someone that used to work with us. And they told me you have a situation going on in the county and you feel that nothing's being done about it and it involves children. I said, yes, ma'am, it does. And I explained to her everything that I found. And she took my information and she said, listen, I'm going to reach out to that area. There's an Atlanta office there and they're going to give you a call. If they don't give you a call, you be sure to give me a call back. Now, I did receive a call that day, and we set up a time to be able to speak in detail and so that I could transfer the information. And without um, divulging too much of who that person, who the next person I'm going to speak of was, not only did the AG, Attorney General, get it from the attorney, but I knew that I can stop. So therefore, I reached out to a very dear and close friend of mine that I knew was personal friends with Chris Carr. And I said, look, don't even have to use my name or anything, but I do need for you to please tell them don't overlook this situation because the DA's name is on it. Please don't. And I told him the same thing I told Homeland Security. How I told them, I said, let me tell you a story about a little girl. There was a little girl who would have somebody come get her out of bed at night, knowing at the age of 5, this man would have full on everything a grown man would do with this child. And it would happen every other night and quite often. And this person that was committing this crime upon this little girl, this little bitty girl, that person was actually brought into that home to actually be the protector of the home because every home needs a man in it. Because at the time, um, the husband or the father of that child was in another state, getting ready. When people go and work and they're getting ready to move, getting ready to transition. So this person was brought into the home to protect the family, and instead of protecting the family, he took advantage of this little girl every night. Not only did he take advantage of this little girl every night, but it wasn't until her mother walked in and witnessed some things. And this little girl had to deal with that. Not only did the little girl have to deal with that, but she also had to deal with the fact that when it came down time to go to court, the little girl's grandmother told her, tell them you don't remember anything. That little girl said, I remember. No, you don't want to do that. Tell them you don't remember. That grandmother was later to be found 20 years later to have bailed that man out of jail during that time. 20 years later, that same little girl received a phone call from a detective in that same town saying, we saw your name in a report. And right now, we have this person in custody for abusing children. That went on 20 years longer. As I shared this story with both the person that's friends with Chris Carr and Homeland Security, and I said, and that little girl has no faith in the justice system. Because unfortunately, not only 20 years went by where this person continued to do the same thing, but they may even be responsible for um, a child being unalived. And that's the truth. The person ended up doing time. Now, I want to tell you about this grandmother. This grandmother actually was heavily involved in defects. You see that, the trend, cover up, Georgia, defects. She was well known throughout the state of Georgia for being the one that would take in children for over 55 years. And that little girl promised herself she would never deal with that situation necessarily amongst her family because she knew the pain it caused her mom, because she saw the power her grandmother had over her. That grandmother's name was Thelma Hill Perryman. That was my grandmother. And I was that little girl.
Hmm.
And that's the only way I was able to get the Homeland Security lady to finally listen to me, because all she kept saying was, well, if it doesn't go across state line, there's nothing we can do. And then it's interesting that the other two people I spoke with, they were Johnny on the spot to do the investigation. Now I want to pause there a minute. Rainbow House is not the first. Felicia Thelma Hill's house is not the first. You mentioned it, Jerome. It goes on and on. Sandusky. It goes on and on with the Olympics, with that doctor. The Boy Scouts, but the Boy Scouts still exist. The Boy Scouts, the Catholic Church, and even in Clayton County. And not only did it start there, but I believe in my heart that when these things occur, they don't just all of a sudden begin. They've been the bed for the cover up. It has been positioned for years. Even if you go back to, I'm gonna say a name that nobody want to hear about either, Teskey. Look at the Supreme Court case. It showed cover up after cover up after cover up, and it breaks my heart. And that's the reason I won't stop. I will not stop until somebody listens and at least give these children what is due. There is no reason that a child should feel like the whole world is against them, including the DA, including the former chief of police that's now the chairman, and including the chief of police that y'all tried to give a pass to. I don't give him a pass. He knew what was going on, but he was scared. He was scared.
And we weren't trying to give him a pass. We were just trying to explain to everyone the predicament he's in. He's hired by the chairman. The chairman votes for him to have the job. He works with the DA, and so now, and that's not saying that he shouldn't have done anything,
Well,
but
that's because of the money
but
he was getting
right.
paid. I'm sorry. It all
I
goes
hear you.
back to sex, money, and power. Let me tell you a perfect example. I want to give you two more. Nickelodeon. If anyone have not looked into the Nickelodeon abuse allegations, it was horrendous. And there's this new one that my children told me about that came out, and it's about bad influence. And it was a situation to where the money spoke more, just like it did in the Sandusky case. That these children and what these children were enduring did not matter. Now, let me go and take a step back for 2 seconds. Not only did I inform all of those that I told you about, but I had a unique opportunity to get it directly to the DeKalb County DFACS person that was in charge of investigating this situation. And you telling me that this is it?
No, and let me say this for
This is
those who
sad.
haven't watched the other two shows, because you're bringing up some good points. The other two shows showed that DFAX dropped the ball. Of course, we know the chairman dropped the ball. And let me add to something about him. Okay, we know his former assistant Katrina Holloway, who was our guest on the last show, said that she gave him the
Mhm.
information. He threw it in the trash. Okay, even if you want to say it's her word against his, how do you explain the fact that we have a sitting commissioner that emailed it to him and the entire board? And I think any mayor or chairman in their right mind would receive an email like that and immediately contact his chief of police and say, "Hey, I need you to look into this, see if there's anything to it," or tell him to contact the GBI. But again, we established with Dr. Holloway the fact that the chairman is friends with the DA. They had a
Mhm.
conversation,
She
and
calls him her brother, by the way. Sorry.
yeah, let's put a picture up of this brother sister who allowed these kids to get molested, so people know who we're talking about. One of them we saw in the Rainbow House video. It was him.
What?
Yeah, I mean, he's always got a wig on for some reason.
Where did y'all get
And
this picture with the tongue hanging out, though? What is this about?
the DA was dancing. I think she said she was the dancing DA. Why her tongue is hanging out, I don't know. Actually, that picture that you got on there, that's the best picture I ever seen of her, but it looks like it was some AI stuff. But the
This is
thing
not
about it,
real. This is
no, no, no,
the
no, no,
DA
no,
sticking her tongue out is real?
no, that's on the internet, and
Oh my
and that's
goodness.
him clowning. But this is the former chairman of the county. This is the sitting DA, and she sat on the board. he received an email from you, also received something from Dr. Katrina Holloway, threw it in the trash can. Why don't we see their mug shots on that news clip we saw? We see Mia Kimber, who should be up there. We see her son, who should be up there. Then we see two women up there that actually filed a police report, but they get locked up for saying, well, you didn't report it. But the two people who really didn't report it is right there before our eyes. There should be mugshots of those two. Hopefully that looks better than this and not as clownish. And another thing we got to think about too, why is Mia Kimber case not adjudicated? If her son is already the president, why is she still out on bond?
That's a great
And
question.
we can only speculate, but the fact that she and Tasha Mosley are friends, Dr. Holloway spoke about the fact that they actually been out of town together and actually took one of the victims out of town with them to Florida.
Wait, wait,
I think we
wait,
need.
wait, Sheriff. I'm so sorry to cut you off. The reason I said wait, because Homeland Security stated to me that unless there was trafficking of children going across state line, they wouldn't be able to get involved, but they were going to walk this investigation through. So you're telling me that there are allegations of that actually occurring?
Yes. And I I I can only speculate on this, but the fact that the DA and Mia Kimber are friends is one reason why she's out on bond. But also, if Mia Kimber is actually sent to prison, if she actually gives a statement, which we don't know if she did or not, there's no way she could give a complete statement without implicating Tasha Mosley because they were friends. They were out of town together. They hired her son back together, who continued to molest that child and we don't know how many others. So that might be a good reason why the woman that we saw on the commercial saying, "Hey, we're here to protect kids and we're here to work with the DA and the police to protect kids from what me and my son are doing," uh, why she's probably still out on bond. And that's something that we really really need to think about. And like, we got a comment that says, ironically, this video was filmed in the board of commissioner studio. Another ironic, which of course you got the sitting chairman right there, looking like the clown he is.
Let's just say
Jerome, you've been Jerome, I know. Jerome, what questions you got, brother?
I'm just the ineptness of everyone involved. I mean, and it sounds like I I could see a world where the DA and the former chair are going to say, well, when we knew about it, there were other actors that knew about it, other agencies that knew about it. So there wasn't no need for us to report. There is a sliver of that. And trust me, that's coming down the pipe.
it's interesting you said that because I was wondering that as well. I want to point something else out on this video, that on that picture of that video. You see the man standing behind the chairman?
Yeah, clown number two. I know him, but you got to identify him for people who don't.
Let me tell you, that's also a previous law enforcement. He actually was a supervisor over in DeKalb County. So my point of it is, these aren't lay people. I'm not trying to be funny. These are people who know crimes. They see crimes. They should understand what the red flags are for them to go and investigate it. I mean, all I've ever been, honestly, was a internal auditor, and that allowed me to put the two and two together. And then, of course, as I shared with you, the unfortunate thing that I too understand what it's like to go through abuse over years and years and years. But that, you know, instead of using what they call, I guess, what they call this, knowledge based, or what they good counsel, y'all spending time up there clowning while these children are being abused, including not only the former chairman, but don't forget, he was a previous chief of police for like over 20 some years. And then this guy retired from law enforcement. So that just solidifies why people like myself have no faith in this in this in this system. It's sad.
It is. I'm gonna ask one more question, and then we're gonna go to a call to action. And again, we want to thank you for being a guest on the show and bringing
It's my
this
pleasure.
information forward. So, based on everything we've discussed, you got the DA sitting on the board. You got the DA that they have to bring hiring and firings to. So we know uh, Caleb, the young man who's serving time in prison now for molesting the kids. That, I guess what? Let me not make this complicated. Is there any way you could think of, and we know the answer to this question, but I just want to make sure it's clear, that Tasha Mosley, the sitting DA, and Chairman Turner was not made aware that there was a molestation problem, especially in light of the fact that you sent him an email?
Well, more than an email, let's go back to this. The county owned the building, the county gives them funding, the reports were made. Also, there was movement to, in some extent, to cover something up back in 2022. That's way before 6 months. So, no, there's absolutely no way that either one of them can pretend they didn't know. Not only that, I find something else interesting. I remember the DA used to always fight to make sure that there was this other organization called Southern something. She didn't want them to provide CSEC services. That's for sexual abuse children services for the evaluation process. And she would tell me things in order for us to block the other company from coming in. And I wonder why. And I still wonder, where do the children go who need to have that testing done? Where are they going now? Now, I've already divulged to you all that I've gone through abuse for years. I didn't find out how long it had gone on intensely until the 20 years later. And I realized that that specific abuse happened to the age of 8. So I'm going to say this part. I understand all too well the anguish and the pain that that young lady deals with every day, that baby deals with every day. And for me, it was my grandmother that was blocking the system. For this child, it's everybody around her that removed her from her home to so-called protect her, and now they have vilified this child. I couldn't sleep for days after reading this and knowing this. That's why I couldn't stop. And to be quite honest with you, I did not stop until, and to be honest, these folks got together and I was no longer chair. I find that when you ask the right questions and people are accustomed to having the ability to cover up for others, and it's always money, power, and sex. That's all they care about. Same as, and that's why I want to make sure it's not just Jermaine to Clayton. It's the same in the Olympics. It's the same in the Sandusky um, debacle. But at the end of the day, Mr. Hill and Mr. Hill, it's the victims who suffer. And I don't want to say victims because I love my life in a way to make sure that I did everything I could to put kids in a better situation, including with the Boys and Girls Club that you mentioned, because I had that vision years before and thinking about how if somebody would have had their eyes on me and would have seen the signs, maybe it could have stopped sooner. But what breaks my heart and breaks my soul is that every one of these people are involved and nobody thinks about the effects on the children. That child never heals.
And let me say this, but as we get ready to do the call to action, all those situations you talk about that are nationally, internationally known, you're right. But let me tell you what makes this unique and which makes this very sad and very embarrassing for Clayton County. The DA is a top prosecutor in the county. She's law enforcement. Her job is to protect kids. The chairman is an ex police chief, even though we tend to forget that, and we forget it because he didn't do much when he was chief, but he still was the chief. So that meant that, and allegedly, once a cop, always a cop, but obviously not in this case. So we got a former police chief and a DA that thinks it's okay to throw something like this in a trash can, not look into it, say it's just whatever. And then suddenly, when it blows up, suddenly when we can't hide it anymore, she comes off the board, it gets covered up. They lock up 2 perpetrators. One continues to stay out on bond now, which I guess is going on 2, 3 years. One is in jail. And then let's just lock up a couple of people and say they didn't report it when they actually did. And now let's just let some dust and time go on it and maybe people will forget. Well, let me say to them, just like we always say every year about 9/11, we will never forget. And let me say this and as a call to action. And Jerome, you can finish up right when I get through. If you would put up the law firm, what's interesting, there is a law firm out there now, And if you go to their page, they talk about the Rainbow House and the fact that they're looking for victims at a Rainbow House so that they can assist them with legal representation. And of course, that's on the civil side. Ultimately, something needs to be done criminally. I know the commissioner said that she did get in touch with Homeland Security. You know, there's a new administration now. That new administration has been overhauling everything.
Mm.
So I want to encourage you. Let's get back in touch with Homeland Security now that's under new leadership, and maybe they'll do something about it. And
Definitely.
right, and then of course we got a new Superior Court judge. He has the authority to call in the GBI. That's an option as well too. But that's a call to action. I'm glad there's a law firm out there. Jerome, I think there's another page, and you can actually see a phone number up there because there could be a victim listening to this show or watching, and maybe they want to come forward. I think it might be the next page, and they can have that law firm look it up. I read it on their webpage where they're actually describing what happened at the Rainbow House, and they're actually describing that they're looking for victims and that they plan to represent and seek justice for these victims in a civil context. But we hope and pray that the civil context will lead to criminal context and these depositions, and then the truth will come out. And as these people are deposed, they need to depose Tasha Mosley. They need to depose Jeff Turner, um,
Hmm.
to catch them committing perjury, and I also depose other people that show their involvement. And then hopefully those agencies that can do what they need to do criminally will come forward and finally get justice for these kids. Jerome, I'm gonna let you take it from here with this call from action as we conclude the show.
Just for anybody who wants to go ahead and call Soroka and Associates in regards to the tragedy that's happened in Rainbow House, that telephone number is 614 683 2746. That's 614 683 2746.
Yes. Can I just leave us with this from my perspective, if you all don't mind?
Go right ahead, Commissioner.
I want to read something to you about justice. Fairness in the way people are dealt with, and there's no justice in the world when people can be made to suffer like that. Justice is making something right, correcting it. At the end of the day, these babies are going to have to endure and with the pain they've already incurred, and for the rest of their lives they're going to deal with that. So unfortunately, the best we can get them is to do something to let them know the whole world is not against them, and that somebody heard them, and that somebody stood up, and that somebody listened to them, and somebody dug in deep to realize that they are not the villains, because they'll never get justice at the end of the day. um, I'll leave you with this. I never thought that I would ever be in the elected role, but if all of this came to pass just for this moment, to make sure that we have other facilities and places where children can be safe, hopefully and prayerfully, then you know what? It's worth it.
Thank you, Commissioner. That was very good. And again, we hope if there's any other victims out there, if there's any people with any information, um, my brother just gave the number to the law firm. Uh, there's no statute of limitation for child molestation that was taken away, just like there's no statute of limitation for murder. So if there are victims out there, we hope that you'll contact the appropriate authorities and this law firm. And even though uh, the current DA and the chairman didn't participate in it, they're responsible by not taking action. And at the very, very least, they violated their oath of office.
Hmm.
Yeah, culpability knows no lines. I just want to go ahead and thank you all for tuning in. Um, Please subscribe, like, and comment on today's emotional episode. We'll make every effort to respond to each and every one of you. And once again, from our hearts, and I think I could speak with everyone that spoke on here, and spoke about the events that went on. Our thoughts are with the victims,
Yes.
100%, and their families.
Yes.
This is a tragic moment, and I'm happy to know that Soroka and Associates contacted the Hill of Justice to go
Definitely.
ahead and speak with us in regards to, at least some of the things that they can do on their end to help assist victims and their families. So, with that being said, I want to thank you each and all for tuning in. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like, and comment. And that's it for today's 3-part series. Thank you so much. Take
Thank
care,
you.
everyone.
Thank you,
Good night, y'all.
Commissioner.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. I hope they share this video too, because the more we can get it out to others, the more we can touch folks to get in touch with that a law firm. But thank you, Heal and Heal.
Yes, ma'am.
Y'all look like twins, by the way. It's so good to meet y'all together.
Yeah,
Right.
we are. As you can see, that we got a difference in opinions, but that's my brother. Yes.
y'all,
Y'all take
y'all,
care.
y'all the real police. Take care.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.